Okay. Alright, so I'm gonna start. Okay. So our story begins with a guy named Stephenson. And so Steve Stephenson is kind of a slacker. He's like a 20-something-year-old dude. He dropped out of college and he has like a mediocre job that's beneath him. Doesn't really have a whole lot going on for him, but he doesn't really have a whole lot of friends either. So pretty much his life is prime for some weird shit to happen to him, which I feel like it's about to. So Steve Stephenson was taking his usual walk, and out of the corner of his eye he sees on a building wall a sign for a new gym opening. And so he's like, I need a change in my life. So he decides that he's going to start going to a gym. And so he goes to a gym, and that's kind of like he starts going and then he forgets and then blah 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 as you do. But one day, like on an average Tuesday, he happens to go to the gym and he meets a fellow, or he happens to back into a fellow named Ray. And this is like a really like, Buddhist dude. And he's like he's got the shaven head. He's totally chill. And so like something about him perks Steve's curiosity, and so he's like, hey man, what's your name? And the Buddhist looking guy says, oh, my name is Ray, but my friends call me Ray of Light. And Steve's like, well, what's up with that, man? And he's like, well, do you got like half an hour? And he's like, Steve says, not really. I gotta be somewhere. So Ray says, all right, that's cool. Maybe like 10 minutes. That's how long it'll probably take to tell this story. And so Ray sits him down, and Steve says, sure. So he sits him down, and Ray divulges the story as to how he got his name, Ray of Light, which is as enthralling as I'm sure my person to the left of me will be able to tell.
That was wrong.
So he began telling the story of how he got his name, Ray of Light. And it all started when he was a teacher in Canada. Now, in Canada, it's very cold or whatever, so people have to be wearing warm clothes. However, the dress code in Canada requires that all people have to wear a uniform at this school. So there's schoolboys and schoolgirls, right? He had the fortune of being able to teach all the schoolgirls during sex ed. And then the first thing he said was, don't have sex because you will get chlamydia and die. Now one of the girls raised her hand and she said, okay, I have a stupid question, but what happens if I've already had sex? And Ray of Light replied,
To which Ray inquired, who was the man you had sex with? And how old was he? To which the schoolgirl replied, well, he says he was a man from the future. But Barney, I believe was his name. To which Ray quickly replies, you'll probably be dying very soon. Ray then quickly canceled class early to go and find Barney and have a word with him. So he went to a place well known. There was a bar named McLaren, apparently. And that's theirs.
So I go to McLaren's, and I search out Barney, and I find him, and he's just sitting there drinking a beer, also talking to a woman. So I go up to him, and I'm like, hey Barney, you just killed one of my students. He's like, well, it's not my fault I'm immune to chlamydia, and no one else is. So then, Barney's picking up on this chick, and I inquire, I'm like, Barney, you gotta stop going after these chicks, you're gonna kill people. He's like, well, sorry, this girl is just, like, so beautiful, and, like, do you see what's in her purse? Do you see it? She's probably really loose. So I look at her purse a little bit, and right there, sitting right in her purse, is this big ass dragon dildo.
So I looked at the dragon dildo, and you know, it's a pretty good dragon dildo, as they do. And I take it out, and it's just drenched in chlamydia. Like, it is absolutely covered in chlamydia. And I look at Barney, and I look at the schoolgirl, and I look at the dragon dildo, and I grab Barney. I just don't know what I can do. So I grab Barney by the collar. I'm like, you see what you did? And I slap him with the dragon dildo. And I slap him with the chlamydia dragon dildo so hard that it breaks through his barrier. And because he's immune to chlamydia, I can't give him chlamydia, but it gives him cat herpes. Cat herpes. And so he's on the floor, and he's reeling from all this cat herpes that is just infecting his system. And I just take the dragon dildo, and I hand it to the schoolgirl, and I'm just like, here, Toots, never use this again. And she's like, okay! Because the girl is Toad.
Because the girl is Toad?
Oh no, I forgot!
What the fuck?
And that was the meaning of Christmas. No, and I told her, here, take this and use it to learn the meaning of Christmas.
The dragon dildo?
Yeah.
Story that Ray kind of like loses train of thought because this is an important story, and this is the story where he teaches the school the meaning of Christmas, a valuable lesson lest we forget. He remembers that like Steve asked him how he got his nickname Ray of Light, which Steve reminds him of. Steve actually points out, he's like, so what does this have to do with any of that? As the astute listener probably would wonder where this is going by now. So Ray catches himself, and he's like, "Oh yeah, shoot, I forgot. That's a completely different story." So this story begins with a little lady named Lord Voldemort. And I was picking her up down at a bar, as you do. And I leaned over and I said to Lord Voldemort, I was like, "Hey, is that your name? Because it's based on a children's book character." And she's like, "No, it's actually not. My real name."
This chick says, "No, my real name is Elvira, and I am actually a vampire, but don't tell anybody." And then I say to the chick, "Oh well, that's pretty private information. I'm surprised you're just giving it out to like on the fly or whatever." And then Elvira says, "Well, I only give out that kind of information to people I really like. You want to come back to my place?" And then I say, "Well, I mean, you are a vampire. This would be kind of weird, but like, why not?" Okay. And then so they go back to Elvira's place, right? She's the vampire. And obviously it's nighttime, all the blinds are closed. And they go to what he thinks is going to be her bed, but it's actually her coffin, because vampires live in coffins,
As we all know.
as we all know.
Those are horror movies verbatim.
While going into her coffin bed, while I was going into her coffin bed, I kind of got freaked out knowing it was a coffin. It was kind of small, confined space, but then I felt something, and it kind of frightened me, which is actually why I was getting the two stories confused. She also has a dragon dildo in her coffin.
Why?
Which is why I was like going with the meaning of Christmas story. Both have dragon dildos, and one was very important to the meaning of Christmas. This one does not, but I feel like I need to tell you that, Stephen. The dragon dildo leads to the meaning of Christmas. Anyway, though, me and Elvira getting in the coffin here.
Well
The
done.
meaning of Christmas.
Okay.
Yeah, you have to
Summarize.
Steve Stephenson went to went to the gym where he met Ray of Light, who's a Buddhist figure in the common mythology.
Sure, why not?
But Steve Stephenson, not having read mythology, decided to ask him how he got his name. So Ray decides to tell him the story of how he met his name.
Brilliant.
Himself. Anyways, he tells the story about how he's teaching a class, and then he teaches about chlamydia. One of his students had sex with Barney. He goes to confronts Barney, finds a dragon dildo in the person he's picking up, and then slaps him with the dragon dildo to find the meaning of Christmas.
Well, no, Barney also got cat.
Cat herpes. So at this point, Steve Stevenson asks him what the actual story is because he's obviously sidetracked. At this point, Ray of Light tells Steve Stevenson the story of how he met Lord Voldemort / Elvira, and went back to her coffin, dead, and found a dragon dildo there. Okay.
We're caught up.
We are now caught up.
Now part of
Okay.
the two-part thrilling conclusion.
Part 1. So, as I lower myself into the coffin bed, expecting some sweet, succulent sex with the vampire, I noticed that there are other coffins in her house, which is kind of weird. But I decide to get up and I go and check out the other coffins. And within all the other coffins is the way that Elvira makes other vampires. She steals young schoolgirls and gives them dildos with vampire blood in them. So when it penetrates them, they become vampires. So obviously, I've just walked into a vampire nest. So I find out what my true purpose in life is to do. Evan.
Okay, so I'm ready. You guys ready? And now for the thrilling conclusion. So I'm seeing just this nest of coffins, and I'm just like, oh my God, Lord Voldemort, Elvira, Elvira, how can you have so many vampires that you've like made with dildos? And she's just like, well, you know, I'm seductive and everything. I'm just like, I can't do this. You know, in the past, I taught schoolgirls, so I can't like have sex with you while there are schoolgirls, you know, just laying about in coffins. And she's just like, really? And I was just like, yeah, really. And so I get up, I get my coat, you know, I'm a respectful gentleman, get on my trilby, and I'm walking out, and I see an open coffin, and in that coffin was none other than the schoolgirl who had slept with Barney Stimson. And so I look at her, and she's in the coffin, and she's lying there, and she's just in this vulnerable position. And I'm just like, oh my God, Toad, are you okay? And then because her name was Toad, if you recall. And then she's like, I'm a vampire! And I was like, oh my God, no, you have chlamydia and you're a vampire? And she's like, okay! And I'm just like, what are you gonna do now? And she's just like, I'm gonna hunt for treasure, but only in the dark because I'm a vampire now. Ah! And I'm just like, well, no, I can't have this. And so I decided that no person should live like this. So I take her, I grab her in my arms, and I can't kiss her because I don't want to catch chlamydia, or the toadness. And so I take this schoolgirl Toad outside into the light, and she burns up, and she dies. And I murdered her, but I don't get tried because she's Canada, and they're cool with that. And that, Stephenson, is why I am called Ray of Light. And Stephenson, he thinks to himself, wow, that story truly was ridiculously stupid.